how do you KYC an AI, right? You can't do it. So you have to have, you have to rely on private keys. Coming from finance, you think you know what's going on. You think you understand the financial system. You think you understand money and investing. And then Bitcoin comes in and turns all of that upside down. We're looking at this thing now, we're waking up to all these lies. There has to be some sort of mechanism by which we can anchor on truth. So it has to start with ownership. The other potential that Bitcoin has as a solution for society. So does that, if we can get store value, then we can start to think about decentralized identity on Bitcoin. We can start to think about cybersecurity with Bitcoin. We can start to think about all these other use cases that are just going to embed it even deeper into our system. You could see us getting to the point where, if you're not signing with private keys, we do not trust this payment. So much fraud and so much corruption could lead to it being we will accept nothing but Bitcoin.
Before we get started, just briefly give the people an overview of who are you and
Sure.
why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so my background's in traditional finance. I was in that space for about 25 years in wealth management, and found Bitcoin like many people in 2017. And it slowly, just completely disrupted my view of the financial world. I feel like I learned more about finance from Bitcoin since 2017 than I ever learned working in the industry for that many years, or at least I felt like I learned the truth, right? So I became very vocal and in trying to promote Bitcoin internally. That I wasn't having much luck. I was working at a very traditional firm that'd been around for 140 years, and it just didn't connect, with their long term, what they've been doing for so long, that this thing could disrupt everything. So I was stepping outside my traditional role and speaking at meetups and speaking at local educational seminars, helping people learn about Bitcoin. And then in 2020 during COVID, clients, obviously were panicked. They're asking me what I did with my money, and we started having conversations about Bitcoin. And that led to a number of clients sending emails that they wanted to add Bitcoin into their portfolio. The only opportunity I had to do anything like that was GBTC at the time. I sent those emails to the trading desk, and of course, everybody's at home, and the trading desk let it go. I didn't think it was going to happen. So we had, 1 to 3% positions of GBTC in these portfolios. That became 15 to 25% of their portfolio in short order, and compliance was in a tizzy. That led to even more in-depth conversations about Bitcoin internally within the firm. And it just finally came to a point where I needed to stop my engagement with Bitcoin or move on, and I moved on. So now I work with Byte Federal, which is a local Bitcoin ATM company. They do they have about 1,400 ATMs in the United States, about 60 in Australia, and have a non-custodial wallet that a lot of our Bitcoin customers utilize to hold their own keys. We're currently working on a custodial wallet, which will be more transaction based, and then they'll be able to move, and there'll also be an on-ramp, right? So people will be able to buy actively, and if they want to then move those coins to the non-custodial wallet and hold their own keys, they can. So they'll have both options. We have a POS that's in beta, and our about 45 customers using the POS system to accept Bitcoin and Lightning payments. We did the first Lightning payment for gas here in Florida. That was fun. That got a lot of attention on X, and a lot of people were driving from a couple hours away to buy gas with Lightning. So that's about it. Other than that, just passionate about Bitcoin and like to help people learn about it and get involved whenever possible.
It's so exciting when there's all of a sudden Bitcoin accepted somewhere where it's usually like uncommon to be accepted. In Switzerland right now, I don't know if you heard the news last week or the week before or something like that. Spar, a really big supermarket chain. It's in Austria, it's in Germany, it's in Switzerland. Like it's a really huge one, is now accepting at one local location in Kreuzlingen, Bitcoin. But they are now expanding it to whole of Switzerland.
Oh,
so
cool.
Whole of Switzerland will be able to will be able to buy with Bitcoin your supermarket thing at a really huge chain. And my hope is that they try it out in Switzerland and maybe also do it in Austria or Germany, because they are all over the place.
That's wonderful. That's great.
It's really cool to see that, and I'm really interested in your before we get with the Bitcoin stuff in your journey, because Bitcoin has kind of a way to suck people in the way. So like there's so many people that worked something else like you and me, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, like I not only I want to put my financial energy in Bitcoin, but I also want to put my time, my life's energy into Bitcoin. Why was it so apparent for you? Like, oh, like let's completely switch career.
Sure. So Bitcoin seems to unlock a desire for truth, right? So coming from finance, you think you know what's going on. You think you understand the financial system. You think you understand money and investing. And then Bitcoin comes in and turns all of that upside down and unlocks a understanding that is more true to reality than any of this matrix of financial products that currently exist today. And so I think what it is that once you realize that whatever that core thing is that you've been doing is all of a sudden a lie, and you get a glimpse of the truth, now I think you start to clamor for it in all other parts of your life. And I think that's why we see so many Bitcoiners go from financial truth to what's the truth about a diet? What's the truth about medication? What's the truth about education? What's the truth about energy? Right? It's like Bitcoin is like the spoke of this wheel, and then we shoot off. And there's so many smart people in our space that there's always somebody to pull you into another rabbit hole and educate you. And you have this innate trust with them because they're anchored to Bitcoin, which you know is this truth machine. And so it's given me the ability to kind of like quickly now identify and communicate with people who I can value and trust, and go with them on other journeys and learn. So I think this is sort of the thing, and that it seems to be a Bitcoin thing, or core to the Bitcoin protocol.
You're coming from the traditional financial space, and I'm asking myself a lot. There's a lot of traditional financial services. There's a lot of things that are happening outside of Bitcoin. And I'm always wondering, what of that will still be there and what of that will not be there? For example, central banks or like local community banks or like those lending things. Like there's a lot of financial services that are important in the traditional financial space. And I'm wondering, as someone that comes from that space, what will survive in a Bitcoin world and what kind of will maybe die in a Bitcoin world?
Right. Well, first, I think it's important to understand that it's going to take a long time for that stuff to die off, at least here in the United States. And I think that's going to, like, for example, my kids' generation, right? They were baffled by what a check was, because I have them banking all with mobile apps and Bitcoin and online. And the other day, my son got paid with a check, and he's like, "What? Like, doesn't make any sense, right? This is paper. Like, this is just number. Like, what? How is this even possible?" He was just baffled by it. So I think it just generationally will dissipate and go away. But there's so much money tied up in the old system that it's going to take boomers and then others passing their wealth to the next generation before we see that stuff fade away. But I think it's going to become less and less important. And you know, I always hold a space for complete collapse because there's all sorts of timelines that could unfold, right? And if but you know that question of collapse becomes doesn't necessarily mean that the old system dies. It might just mean that it morphs into a stable coin and digital banking infrastructure, right? Where we do have Bitcoin, but we also have centralized digital infrastructure that we're interacting with, and that Wall Street TradFi system just morphs into that, and the players sort of change, and some die off, and some move forward. I think we're kind of seeing that today. So I think the only way that goes away is in a complete collapse scenario, and I don't know that any of us really want to experience that, or even want our friends and family to experience that. So, as much as I would love to see a Bitcoin only future, I think the best thing that can happen is a slower transition where people volunteer to be a part of that Bitcoin standard, as opposed to having it, thrust upon them.
Yeah, it's a good point. You need the grassroots movements. I mean, we see what problems come in El Salvador was an interesting thing, because there was a grassroots movement, but then all of a sudden, very early on, someone tried to also push it down from the top, and it went good, but also there was some bad things coming with that. And just really quickly, because I also had in my whole life just one physical check in my hands, and I couldn't redeem it. I actually put it in my waste paper basket. It was like, I don't know, $15 or something like that, because I was running from bank to bank, and for some reason I couldn't get it out of there. So I can really relate to that. First I'm getting that, I'm like, is that a joke? Like,
right.
what the hell did I just get?
How can this be true? How can you just write your name on paper and somebody can turn that in for money?
Yeah, but the same thing is, that's actually might be an interesting thing, because the same thing can be true for now the normal currency, the normal money that you're using, and someone in the future is like, how did you trust that everyone can just print that? Like that doesn't seem secure. You need to verify it on the blockchain. Like how the hell did you survive that?
That might be where we're going, right? When you start to think about the chaos that AI could create in the wrong hands. I mean, the amount of cloning or fraudulent transactions that might be coming could that's one discussion I had recently with a friend about how much fraud there is right now in the system because of AI. And if that gets levered up to where you just cannot trust a transaction, that you can't trust that it'll settle without it being pushed, right? Because like we pull so much right now, like we're doing ACH pull, and we're pulling the credit cards are extending credit, and there's all this delayed settlement in the system that an individual right now and an individual leveraging AI can massively take advantage of the system and you could get goods delivered from Amazon the next day. You could get your Bitcoin instantly and reverse those transactions, right? And then go set up another account, another identity, blah, blah, blah. So with that in mind, you could see us getting to the point where, like, if you're not signing with private keys, we do not trust this payment. And then what does that mean for adoption, right? That's one of those things where you're like, so much fraud and so much corruption could lead to it being like, we will accept nothing but Bitcoin.
That's a good point. Do you think AI ultimately enhances the Bitcoin adoption?
I think it does. I think it does in a big way. Yeah, we have these conversations all the time at work. We were recently talking about, like, what does an AI potentially hire humans to do some sort of work on a task that needs to be done in the physical world, and then pays them in Bitcoin, and they go to the Bitcoin ATM to turn that into cash. Or does a human go out and do services for cash and bring it to the ATM and convert it to Bitcoin to pay the AI, like its fee or whatever it's doing? Like, who knows, right? I mean, I think there's going to be a really wild interface between humans and AI going forward, and I think Bitcoin is the currency of that space for sure.
It's
I mean, how do you KYC an AI, right? You can't do it. So you have to rely on private keys, and that AI controls its own private keys, and it can sign and push out a payment. Then that's how you verify. If all payments are just only going to be verified by private keys, because we want to empower this robotic future, then we have to rely on public-private key pairs. We can't rely on identity anymore.
Because you can fake identity with AI so good, the voice, the sound, everything.
Yeah, right. So I know Strategy is working on something of this type, and lots of other projects have worked on decentralized identity. But at the end of the day, right, the simple way to look at it comes down to, like, do you control the private key, and therefore you can push a payment, and then we're not going to worry about who's on the other end.
And then people will laugh at us from the future that we accept that paper that you can literally print us out of a printer.
Yeah. AI is going to laugh at us for sure. Like, you crazy people.
AI, I think, is already laughing at us. That the questions that we pose to AI are like, oh, like, that's so obvious. Come on, do better, humans.
Yeah, exactly. It's good stuff.
I actually want to do that. I didn't get to that, but I want to have a podcast like that with an AI. Probably like ChatGPT is probably a good one. Just have a conversation, because I've seen some people do it when it came out, and I think now it's so much more advanced that it actually could be an interesting chat. And
I know I've heard Jeff Booth talk about an AI brain, that an avatar that he's created of himself, that he sends to meetings. He's mentioned this on a couple of different podcasts. It might be interesting to try and have a podcast with his avatar.
Oh gosh, that would be so fun. It would be, because I had Jeff on, I think, 2 times already. So it would be so fun.
Who knows? Time. Maybe you are talking to his avatar.
Then it would be a very good one.
Right? If you ask him and he says, well, you've already done it, Rob. That would be pretty awesome.
He's like, yeah, like the 3rd time, let's do it again. It's, I mean, I don't know how much this has to do with Bitcoin, but it's a really interesting question of how we move forward. It's already now on Twitter or on any social media app for that matter, but I'm mostly on Twitter. When you see a video, the first thing you're like, is that, if you see something crazy, you first like, is that AI? Right. You always have the kind of suspicion that is that AI, and usually if it's AI, there's like community notes coming up and 100%. Like this is AI because of that and that. But we are just in the beginning of that phase.
Absolutely. So, I got a story about that. So we had a week here where there was orbs all over where I live, and so you would hear like Black Hawk helicopters, and you'd go outside, right? And you'd see them following these orbs. So we shot video of it, and I put it on my X account, like, because this was just crazy. And it's like these 2 orbs, Black Hawk helicopter, and they're just like following each other around, So I shot it. My friend shot it. Like, we know it. We saw it. Like, we know it wasn't AI, but I put it on X, and the comments are like, yeah, that's BS. That's AI. I could see the orbs move through the tree like this way. Like, they're making all these points about how it was fake video, and I was just dying. I was like, there's nothing you can do. Like, we live in a post-trust world. It doesn't matter what you know. Everybody's going to have their own interpretation and think it's a lie or a scam. So like what? Like, what's the value of even trying to convince anybody of anything? You have to live like just in your own truth and find your own way. Like it's really it's a wild experience to see people just blatantly think that you're scamming them when you're trying to do your best thing. And that's happened, I'm sure, with you as well. Like when you're talking about Bitcoin, there's some people that just like, as much as you feel and know it's real and true, they will never accept it, or they won't. They think you're trying to do something. They think you're trying to scam them or something.
Oh yeah, it's I get that all the time. Yeah, oh, you're just talking about Bitcoin because pump the price,
Yeah.
and I always take it as a compliment that someone thinks I can pump the Bitcoin price.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, of course. I say buy Bitcoin, and like all of a sudden we have plus 10%.
Yeah, and then they turn around and go, "Hey, man, you know anything about hex?"
But it's an interesting thing. You said post-trust world, so like basically a trustless world. What do you think the role of Bitcoin will be? I feel like Bitcoin is the only thing you can trust at that point then.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think once you understand that, I think this is why a lot of people start thinking in terms of blockchain. They understand Bitcoin. They look at the consensus mechanism and they go, let's apply this to every place where there's no trust or we need more trust. Which then, of course, leads to them doing a lot of things that they probably shouldn't do. But yeah, I think like we said before, when you start thinking about AI, you start thinking about fraud, you start thinking about can I trust this video? Can I trust that this politician really said something? Right? We're playing. We have actively right now at Bifederal. We have what we call a digital notary, but it's basically so that you can embed data into the blockchain, right? So it's a timestamp, open timestamp program. It's all open source stuff. But it allows you to say, take a video. Let's say you captured a video of a politician doing something corrupt, and you wanted to embed that in the Bitcoin blockchain, so it's available forever and it's timestamped, and it couldn't be taken down. It's that kind of stuff, right? So if we're as a species going through this great awakening, right, where we're figuring out that maybe money was a lie, maybe our history is a lie, maybe where humanity came from is a lie, this food system's a lie. Like if we're looking at this thing now and we're waking up to all these lies, there has to be some sort of mechanism by which we can anchor on truth. And Bitcoin is the first one, and money was Bitcoin is the first, but it's also the best protocol we have right now for anchoring truth. So money was the first use case. Identity could become a second use case. Logging and recording, time stamping stuff that we need to preserve for the future could be a second or a third use case. And I think more will come. Jason Lowry's talking about using Bitcoin as basically a cybersecurity powerhouse or engine that is going to protect data, right, from being altered in the future as well. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going to come from this massive protocol being adopted globally. Money's just the first. It's kind of cool that Satoshi applied it to money, because that's a great way to hack people into the system. Nothing like greed to get people to adopt something. Nothing, especially if you're trying to pull them out of fiat. I know when I first got into Bitcoin, and many of the other people that I've watched, we get into it because it's like, oh my God, we're gonna make a ton of money. And then over time it evolves into like, oh my God, this is so much more important than money. And this could really provide massive benefits to humanity in all these different ways, not only from the culture of having a hard money, but then all the other things like we're talking about here now that could be built on top of this system. And so that I think is just a natural outgrowth of this trust machine that I think is going to become incredibly important to a society that's waking up.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. But isn't money the biggest problem of, like, it's the most fundamental problem because it touches like all the other aspects?
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, it's like it makes a lot of sense to start with money, because money is the thing where we store our financial, but also our life's energy in, and solving this trust solves already so many other things. So that's a great way to start it. Also, I'm just thinking out loud here. When we are having now central institutions and we're putting a lot of trust in them, this works is if you cannot fake a central institution. But now you can fake anything. You might have talked to, I don't know, there's a banking institution and there is a guy that you always talk to. Now all of a sudden the same guy calls you at home, has the same voice than he has when you're in a bank, and he asks you, can you please just like give me that data and stuff like that? And your money is gone because you thought this is this guy. And if this comes more and more down in society, and those things already started and will just get even more and more and even worse. So this completely erodes the trust into those central authorities, because you don't even know if those central authorities are the real ones or the fake ones. Mm-hmm. And you have no way of knowing it. So in a way, those things make us more decentralized and make us all more a little bit more cypherpunk, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's already happened to clients of mine, that an AI voice replica fooled them into thinking their grandson was in dire need, and they lost $120,000. It was shocking to hear that story from them. So it's already being done. And so that if you live, when I think about this and I start to think about living in a world where you cannot trust any source, then community becomes more valuable, interpersonal relationships become more valuable, Bitcoin becomes more valuable, physical resources become more valuable. And I also believe that spirituality and connection to source or consciousness, whatever, however you like to describe that, becomes incredibly valuable. So, because that leads to higher cognitive recognition of your intuition, right? Like that connection between intuition and your mental kind of focus or real world logical interactions. So I think this is part of the process that we're all going through, is like how do we live in a highly technological world where everything could be faked, and still does that either push you over the edge and you become not human, or does that elevate humanity in a way where you rise above and evolve beyond and above, and then technology maintains itself as a tool that this higher level being can then use to bring things into materium. So like I tend to be positive, and I tend to think that this future is going to be on the upswing. I look at all the negativity, and I understand it and I fear it, but I feel like if we focus on how to get to these other levels, we can use technology as a tool to elevate our species. So I think the post-trust or post-truth world is going to drive that division, and you're going to have to make your choice which path you're going to go. And I think it's going to be a lot of work to get there for a lot of people.
I mean, in the past, technology always advanced humanity. I mean, of course, you can also look at it in a bad way, but mostly in the big inventions and discoveries that we made, starting from the printing press to electricity and all those things, advanced humanity, brought humanity closer to each other, and gave humanity more tools so we can do even more things. Mm-hmm. One of like a mid-range a guy from the middle class right now is way richer than the richest guy alive 200 years ago. He can do a lot more than the richest guy 200 years ago, which is crazy to think how much a guy in 2050 or 2140 or something like that can do, because he has so much more resources in his, or so many better tools and skills at his disposal than someone that is now. Like at past, we always look at almost like they're like grave people, but they aren't. But we have so much better tools in our. If you just look back 5 years, if you have Google versus if you have an AI at your fingertips, that makes a huge difference in how fast you can find things and how fast you can do things
and learn.
Wow, yeah. So I do hope, and I'm always optimistic, that all those technology, all those discoveries and inventions that we are having now, AI and Bitcoin primarily, will advance humanity a lot. And we're like, wow, that was really profound and important for us. All of a sudden we can advance technology a lot faster and better. And the only flip side to that is the people that get it very late get left behind. But even the last person in Bitcoin will still have a better life because of Bitcoin, even though he's the last person to actually adopt it.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'm beginning to build like this hopeful vision of AI, because I've used it. My son has used it enough to see where it could have like major impacts on things outside the computer screen. And we've been using it recently to work on designing a boat and working on plans for that. And you start to think about uploading those plans to a robot that we could then upload instructions and teach it how to weld. And all of a sudden, right, you become this manufacturing, you have all this manufacturing capability with mechanical devices that are going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper relative to Bitcoin. Incredibly powerful. I mean, I can imagine doing all sorts of things with a robot and an AI brain that would scale my capability to feed my family, build the devices I want to automate things around my home, on the farm. There's so many great things that could be invented that are unique to your situation. So it's like I just see this future where raw materials and basic resources and Bitcoin and AI become the tools for sort of unlimited abundance, or at least giving people the ability to really be sovereign should they choose it, right? Because, I mean, we've had to rely on so many third parties for so many things. If my AI is my doctor, is my engineer, is my accountant, is my business plan developer, you name it, right? I mean, that just scales the individual at a phenomenal rate. Like, I think what we're going to do is mind blowing. And I think, if you combine that with an ever increasing Bitcoin purchasing power, that's true individual sovereignty, right? That's what I'm so excited about in the future.
You want to build a boat?
Yes, a big boat for the next flood. Yeah, no, we've already built a little aluminum skiff. That was his first project, and now we're looking at something more substantial. And AI is helping us with that.
It's super interesting because it makes us think about the proof of work, or let's say in general work, because if there's robots and they have brains, do humans even need to work anymore? If a robot can just cook for us, clean for us, build things for us, get us to space, and do all the things that we're now doing, like why would humans need to work? And then also, how do we keep track of things? How is entrepreneurship looking, and what importance has Bitcoin in a world where like 99% of the things are done by robots that are set up once? They can build themselves, they can manage themselves. It's a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, you can obviously can go down this rabbit hole, like, well, they're going to turn against us and murder us and all that, but I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case. Yeah, but if you want to take the positive route and you start to think about alleviating all those burdens from your life of like, I've got to work in order to go to the store and get food and to pay my medical bills and to put gas in the car and da, 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 da. If those costs shrink dramatically because of AI, while simultaneously Bitcoin is growing in purchasing power, it's not going to take a lot of Bitcoin to become sovereign in that future. So, and when I say sovereign, I mean like exactly what you said, like my robot's doing that for me. If your robot's doing that for you, then what are you spending your time doing? And this is where I think it leads people to a more spiritual path, whatever that looks like for you, right? Of, the time and energy to sit and think about, why am I here? As opposed to, I got to get a cup of coffee and I got to go to work and I got to go here and I got this meeting, I got that meeting, and then I got to get home and pay my bills and do my taxes and blah, 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 blah. If you can sit there and that can be taken care of for you, and you can spend your time on like, why am I here? What's my purpose? And how do I make this a better, what am I going to learn from this experience? How can I make this a better experience? These are bigger questions that I think we're all here to try and answer, but we don't get the time and we don't have the energy to focus on it that we deserve.
It also makes you think about, what if those robots all use Bitcoin to communicate value to each other? And what does it mean if you have a control of 0.1 Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, whatever you have? Because dividing 8 billion people to 21 million Bitcoin is one thing, but add to those 8 billion people 50 billion robots that also want to have those Bitcoin, makes that Bitcoin a lot more valuable all of a sudden. And is the deflationary power is even bigger. I never thought about that. Interesting.
Right. And what if they need to, like, hey, we need to stream sats and we need to do it in a more secure way so that I can hire other AI agents. And I don't think the code is working properly, so I'm going to adjust the Lightning code myself with these other AI agents so that we can evolve the system to a point that we can use it better. Like, shit is going to accelerate at a rapid rate. I mean, that's just like any one of these AI rabbit holes. Whenever I get into this discussion, we're just constantly blown away at how fast this stuff's going to change the world. And it's just getting started. I mean, what was it like? When did ChatGPT come out? Like 2020, like during COVID, and it was like, oh yeah, I can write a better email, or and now we're using it for unbelievable things, combined with all the other agents that are out there. It's mind blowing.
Oh, it came out, I think, later than that. I think 2022 only.
Was that what it was? Yeah, it's gone really fast.
Yeah, I just see it. ChatGPT initial release date is November 30, 2022.
There you go.
It's kind of weird.
It's kind of like during peak inflation in the United States, and then that gets released, and we've been going downhill ever since.
Yeah, it also makes inflation look better than it actually is, right?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
It's the whole theory. I mean, we talked already about Jeff Booth and the AI agent of Jeff Booth. The AI Jeff would now say, yeah, you don't have to measure from the zero. You have to measure from the productivity level of humanity. And then you have the true inflation rate, which I think is a very true thing and is not often enough talked about.
Right. And it's like, do they... Right, you can make the reasoning that deflation through AI is going to allow governments to print extraordinary amounts of money and devalue the debt and kick the can down the road. The other another scenario would be like if they don't print and we get this much deflation, that's a complete default of the debt and it breaks the system. Like if they miscalculate how much deflation is coming and they don't print fast enough, or they don't print at all because some powers that be are more interested in trying to collapse humanity and for more of a control structure, right? Like in 1929, we didn't print. There was a central bank, they didn't print, and they got a lot more control out of not printing. So that's another option, right? I mean, we hear a lot in the space about they have to print. True, if they want to keep the game going. If there's powers that be that don't necessarily want to keep the game going, that want to put extreme amount of pressure on humanity to try and seize control, then the move would be not to print. So I think it's, either way, Bitcoin excels in purchasing power against all other forms of currency. So, but it's interesting to just kind of think about those different scenarios because they're radically different. And I think the average Bitcoiner is only thinking in terms of the print that's coming.
It's the whole game theory of the person that embraces new technology right now, that would be AI and Bitcoin, will not only be way more productive and have get done a lot more, but also have the superior store of value to store that financial energy properly. And those will be the new kings and queens of the world. And those who are kind of saying, "Oh, AI is all bad. You should not do it because they will they, they will kill us one day." And no, we should not use Bitcoin because I don't know, it's burning the forest or whatever you want to say about Bitcoin. Those who will just get left behind. So I have a lot of empathy for Bitcoin haters because they will live in a world that won't be as good for them. It will still be better than now. So they will still benefit from those technologies, but they will not benefit to the same extent as those people who actually embrace it early. And in both Bitcoin and AI, we are extremely early. I think we are just briefly seeing what's actually possible with those technologies.
Right. We're in that like cat video to YouTube phase.
That is crazy. How would you actually describe of where we are into the, let's say there's a point where we have hyper Bitcoinization and then there's like 2009. How would you describe where we are currently?
I think we have quite a ways to go before we get hyper Bitcoinization. I guess we have to define hyper Bitcoinization, right? If hyper Bitcoinization is that it becomes the predominant medium of exchange and unit of account and store of value. If that's how we're going to define it, then yeah, I think we have a long ways to go. If it's just if we're just going to measure it by store of value and it becoming sort of the treasury asset of sovereigns and big corporations, I think we're on the precipice of that happening. So I think as a dominating store of value, I think that's within the next couple of cycles. As a medium of exchange, I'm thinking it's going to be more in the 15 to 25 years, and then unit of account, where sovereigns are just completely given up. It's a much longer term, maybe 50 years out.
We are already seeing kind of the first step towards with nation states now into Bitcoin, with big corporations into Bitcoin, with even like BlackRock into Bitcoin, which all of that wasn't the case just, let's say, 3 to 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, MicroStrategy, if you count that as a big institution, then you have to go back 4.5 years ago. How do you look at the rapid pace of adoption for Bitcoin as a store of value?
Yeah, I'm obviously excited about it. I think the more entities and individuals adopted as store of value is incredibly exciting. It's going to be it's the first step, right, to all of those people and entities starting to think like us, that this could be a solution for other things. So it has to start with ownership, just like it did for us. It starts with ownership, and then from there you'll start to think about Bitcoin, the other potential that Bitcoin has as a solution for society. So does that, if we can get store value, then we can start to think about decentralized identity on Bitcoin. We can start to think about cybersecurity with Bitcoin. We can start to think about all these other use cases that are just going to embed it even deeper into our system. And then, of course, you'll get, unit of account and medium of exchange. So it's the first step. It's shocking how fast it changed. That was, just like wild. It seems like, but at the same time, right? I guess it's like talk is faster, especially in at the institutional level. Talk about adoption moves so much faster than actual ownership. And then do they have ownership in a sovereign way? Meaning, do they hold their own keys? Right. So there's still a lot of education. It's great that they're there and they're going to start buying, right? But we have to move them now from like, oh, I'll just buy the ETF because it's easy, to I'll buy real Bitcoin and I'll hold my own keys. And then how do we set up a multi-sig for a government or an institution? All stuff that we think is probably fairly straightforward, but for them is you just, it's a big learning curve, especially when you need to convince a board or you need to convince, a bank to help you with these things. So it's awesome that it's there. I think the true outcome of all this we'll see in the next cycle. That will be like the undercurrent lifting the next cycle, and we'll be talking about a whole new set of things that are exciting to us. But the undercurrent that's really going to drive the next cycle is probably what we're seeing today.
Yeah, it's those cycles are just crazy. when you always look at the end of a cycle, what happened to the whole cycle, you're like kind of unbelievable what just happened. Really, really cool. We have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
That I guess if you make mistakes, you get smarter. Don't be afraid of screwing things up. It sucks, but pain is a motivation to get better. So I think that's what I've learned through my life, right? You bang your head against the wall enough times, eventually you're like, maybe I should just go around the wall.
It's a good way, yeah. Like trying out a lot of things and then learning from the feedback you get. That's the only way of how to learn properly. Even if you learn from other people, that might be a good way also, but nothing beats your own experience.
Right. Yeah. No, my son has got a great ability to learn from other people's mistakes. I was not born with that ability. I got to do it myself.
Yeah, me neither. Really cool. Thank you so much. We have Andrew Dean in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question. You kind of already teased it a little bit, but how do you define a Bitcoin standard? Okay.
For me, a Bitcoin standard is full store value, medium of account, or unit of account, medium of exchange. Like full adoption. It's the entire globe on the Bitcoin network. To me, that's the Bitcoin standard. And so that's a journey. It's not a flashpoint. And it's gonna take a long time, but we have a protocol that can last thousands and thousands of years. So I think we're going to get there.
Do you think, or isn't a Bitcoin standard world other government or other tokens allowed? Like, is it a world where there's financial singularity where it's only Bitcoin, or is Bitcoin just a dominant in each category?
I see it as just in terms of money, as the store value, medium of exchange, unit of account. So it's what everything is priced in. It's what everything is stored in. That doesn't mean that you don't have a token for identity, or you don't have a token that represents your ownership of real estate or the title to a car. Like, there could be other tokens, but the value of every token, or the value of everything, would be priced in Bitcoin.
That's a world I want to live in, hyper Bitcoin as well. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Sure. I'm on X at humble_hodl1111. And otherwise, you can go to bytefederal.com and see the company there. And you could reach out to me either through the company or through X. I'll take a message. So
thank you so much, Paul. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.